Hi there, and you're very welcome to this ACCA explainer video where I want to talk about the marketing mix and the 7 Ps. To introduce myself, my name is Sean Purcell, and I want to use all that experience to share with you what you need to do so when you sit your SBL exam, you can give the best possible account of yourself. So what are we going to look at in this session? Well, first of all, I'm going to give you a quick recap of the marketing mix and the 7 Ps so that we have a basis on which to work from. I'm then going to look at the type of questions that you can expect to get in your SBL exam in the area of marketing and show you how to deal with them to maximize your marks. And then finally, I'm going to share with you all of the tips you need to take on board with regards to maximizing your score in the SBL exam when answering questions. So that's what we're going to deal with. However, one thing I want to just stress to you that is probably the most important thing on SBL is that SBL is a very, very different exam to all other ACCA exams, and it's an applied exam and not a technical exam. Other exams require technical knowledge and then use that technical knowledge to maybe balance accounts, to calculate tax liabilities, or to solve mathematical problems. Whereas in SBL, none of that really is needed. Yep, and your brain doesn't need to work that way in SBL, and what we need to do is take a completely different approach if we are to be successful. Yep, because there are no marks for regurgitating technical theory in the SBL exam. Yeah, no marks at all. And I'll often get students on my courses who sometimes maybe they've won prizes on a tax exam, and they pester me that they want to have more notes so that they can learn theory more. And really have to work on them and say to them and convince them that it's really important to understand the theory, but it's not important to learn the minutiae of it. It's not going to get you any marks in the exam. And just in case you didn't get it the first time, there are no marks for regurgitating theory in the exam. Okay, so let's be clear on that. Okay, so how are we going to be able to apply in the SBL exam? Let me share with you how we can apply better. And to be honest, I love SBL as a subject because it's around us all of the time. It's around us in everyday life. We just often can't see it. So let me help you see SBL. Yep. So, and in the context of marketing and the 7 Ps, well, it's something that bombards us wherever we are, whatever we're doing. And maybe to help you see this, I just wonder, have you heard of the following product? Hopefully you have. Yeah, Coca-Cola is probably, if the famous or one of the most famous brands in the whole world. Yeah, and in fact, actually have changed how we perceive Father Christmas. Yeah, there was a Coca-Cola advert many years ago where Father Christmas dressed in the colours of Coca-Cola, red and white. And ever since that advert, because it was so powerful, we have always now perceived Father Christmas to be wearing red and white. But before that advert, Father Christmas, or Santa Claus as he's also known, would wear green or sometimes wear brown. And the red and white all comes from the power of marketing of Coca-Cola. So, little side fact there for you. Do you know what the difference between Coca-Cola in a can is and Coca-Cola in a bottle? Is it any different? Yep. Where do we normally get a can and where do we normally get a bottle? normally get a can probably in a corner shop, in a vending machine, in a multi-pack in a supermarket. We probably get a bottle in a restaurant and maybe a wine bar. Yeah. So what's the difference? Well, there's not really any difference to the Coke, but the Coke in a can might cost you 50 or 60 pence in the UK, whereas a Coca-Cola in a restaurant might cost you £4, even £5. But that Coca-Cola in a restaurant will probably be served with a glass. It will be served with some ice, maybe even a slice of lemon. Yep, it's the same Coca-Cola, but they'll charge you £4 or £5. In fact, it reminds me of a rather painful thing that happened to me this summer. And I was in a kind of fancy part of the south of France, and I went to a restaurant and I bought 3 Coca-Colas. For 3 Coca-Colas, I paid €15 for each one. €15 for a Coke, it was less in that bottle than there is in a can. But hey, the power of marketing, yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. On Coca-Cola, saying a little bit more, have you wondered why that you can get Coke in a bottle, but sometimes you get Coke in a smaller bottle? Or why does Coca-Cola offer Diet Coke? Yep. Why does Coca-Cola offer Coca-Cola in a can, but in a different shaped can? And why does it offer Coca-Cola in a can and then a diet can? What's going on? What are the answers to all of this? Well, that's marketing, yeah? And I will reveal those answers. But to do well, not just on marketing questions, but on all of SBL, it's important that we are curious. Yeah, it's important that we visualize things. Yeah, and marketing and the 7 Ps, they're the mechanism that change our perception of things. They're the mechanism that persuade us to buy things. They're the mechanism that maybe, is happy to pay one price or another price. Yeah, because at the end of the day, Coca-Cola is a brown, fizzy, sugary liquid, which is the same however it is priced, poured or perceived. And it's marketing that does that. So let's have a look at what we basically need to know on the marketing mix. Okay, let's have a quick recap of the marketing mix and how the 7 Ps links to it. But please remember that this isn't a teaching video. And if you want to get a depth of knowledge, you need to go to chapter 12 of the ACCA Study Hub, which provides excellent resources. There's quizzes on there, there's flashcards, there's past questions. That is the resource you should be accessing for your SBL knowledge. Please stay away from all the false prophets on Facebook and so on. So review that, and also review technical articles. Very important to review all the technical articles, and you want to make sure you review the particular technical article on the 7 Ps, which you can find on the ACCA site. So to give a very quick review of what I'd want you to do in the exam, the marketing mix is originally started with 4 Ps: the product, the price, the promotion and the place. And these were things that we manipulated of a product. As services became more relevant in society, 3 extra Ps were added, and what we would add to those initial 4 Ps were looking at people, processes and physical evidence, particularly when we're marketing services. So in an exam, what I would like you to be able to do is do a quick brainstorm of the typical things we would do against product, price, promotion and place, people, processes and physical evidence. And that then can be used as a catalyst to apply in the context of the scenario. They're not all going to be relevant, I'll show you. But here is what you need to know. On a product, what do we mess around with on the product? We mess around with its size, its features, its style. We might mess around with packaging, we might mess around with branding, we might mess around with warranty. Okay? But as I just said, we will not necessarily deal with all of these aspects of the product, and it would depend on the context. For example, we were talking about Coca-Cola. I wouldn't buy a can of Coca-Cola because it comes with a 5-year warranty. But I might buy a car. A Miele washing machine comes with a 10-year warranty, and a lot of people will buy that washing machine because of that. So for exam purposes, it would be good if you understand what we can mess around with on a product and then use that understanding to use a brainstorm, which we then can use to help plan our answer. So answering questions before, the reason that can came out by Coca-Cola, if you didn't know, was not to appeal to consumers, but to appeal to retailers. By designing the can this way, they could give retailers a higher turnover per square meter of shelf space. So, supermarkets have limited space. If you can generate more turnover per square meter, which this can did, it becomes attractive. So therefore retailers would buy more of that Coca-Cola and Coca-Cola would sell more of it. That smaller bottle would be popular in cocktail bars and it just looks a bit more stylish. People would pay more for it. And Diet Coke would appeal to a different market segment in the same way caffeine-free Coke and so on would. So we adjust the features of a product, the size of the product. The branding remains strong, although Diet Coke could be argued to be its own brand. When we look at price, there are elements of price we manipulate to basically encourage people to buy, to change perception and so on. So the basic pricing of cost plus, often an accounting price, not really a great price because it ignores what the customer will pay. I'm sure Coca-Cola costs pennies to make, but will sell for high prices, sometimes particularly in a glass bottle. Yeah, it's nothing to do with the cost. Yeah, an iPhone apparently doesn't cost much, but sells for a high price. Promotional pricing would be maybe to encourage people to buy things at the end of season and stuff like that. Differential pricing would charge a different price for a different market segment. That market segment could be based on age, so it could be, kids' clothes might be cheaper than adults' clothes. It could be based on time, so peak and off-peak. Could be based on gender, although you have to be a bit careful legally there. But a lady's haircut would normally be more than a man's haircut. Competitors, what are they charging? We might need to price accordingly. Life cycle, if it's a new iPhone, so for example, it would be more expensive. When a new telly comes out, it would be more expensive compared to maybe later in the life cycle where you would charge less. And then prestige pricing, we'd sometimes charge more, so people think it's better because it's more expensive. So there's very similar cars. Volkswagen Audi Group own Volkswagen, own Audi, own Bentley, and they own Lamborghini. Similar car components would be priced differently. So an Audi would be more than a Volkswagen, a Bentley would be more than an Audi. Components might not be that different always. Yeah. Rolls-Royce is owned by BMW. Much of what's inside a Rolls-Royce is a BMW, but they will be charged more. So just appreciate that kind of thing. If we think about promotion, we need to think about how it's advertised, where it's advertised. Sales promotion, you might do buy one, get one free on a chocolate bar, but you wouldn't do that on a Rolls Royce. Yeah. Public relations is kind of brainwashing people through magazine articles and associations, quite clever. And then direct selling would be appropriate for more expensive goods, maybe financial services. It wouldn't be a Coca-Cola salesman in the shop. Would you like this Coca-Cola, madam or sir? But there may be personal selling involved with expensive jewellery or expensive clothing or financial services, that kind of thing. So this would sell for 50p, this would sell for a lot more, mainly because of the packaging. Yep. If we think about the place, where do we sell it? Think about the distribution channel chosen. Are you selling it online? Are you selling it in a fancy shop? Would definitely change people's perception. Are we using people to sell it? If it's a service, if it's self-service, or is it personal service? Yeah. So how do those people look? What skills do they have? How professional are they? Again, it depends what we're selling. Yeah. Some people would want things quick, so we might not want personal service. And that would link to processes. So is it automated or is it personalized? How quick do you want it? Yeah, again, this is more linked to the marketing of services. and also the capacity. So a human being has less capacity than maybe a vending machine. Yep. So think about that. Think about shopping at Amazon. Think about shopping at Harrods. Very different. Physical evidence would be the style of the shop, would be the people. It could also be things such as tangible evidence, which might be the receipt, might even be the bag, the packaging, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I think a good example of someone who has exploited marketing as well as Coca-Cola are these people who took what effectively was a humble bit of electronics that you would previously buy in an electronics store, and they started to market it like, luxury cars, fine watches, and they would sell what was traditionally in some, fairly boring electric shop. Suddenly there's the Apple store. It's a lifestyle, it's an experience, it's an event, it's a theatre. Yeah, and it's selling a phone, or it's selling a computer, or it's selling a mouse mat or something like that. They've made it sexy. Yeah, they've made it sexy by manipulating the product, the packaging. Apple is sleek aluminium. The price is high, so it must be good because it's expensive. Promotion, tend to not put them on sale, yeah, because that could devalue the brand. They tend to be have good PR about how great they are. And the place, well, you normally can only buy them through official resellers, or in most places at the Apple store, who can control the whole customer experience. And when we go into the Apple store, there's some physical evidence, there's some design features. They all look like that, with the beach benches, the people in Apple t-shirts who are very knowledgeable, or very professional. Yeah, what a great business Apple is, and we can learn from that. So that is a very, very brief recap. Please look at the Study Hub, please look at the article, and let's now talk about how we can use such things in an exam situation. Okay, now let's have a look at the types of questions you can expect to get in the area of the marketing mix and 7Ps. First of all, you are not going to get any questions like this. Clearly define what is meant by the 7Ps of the marketing mix. As I say, this will never come up, and you know why it won't come up, because it's an applied exam and it's not a technical one. So you're not going to be asked for any technical definitions. And if you were to give technical definitions in your exam, this is not going to get any marks, and it's also going to cost you time. So please stay away from technical definitions. More likely question that you're going to get is going to be along the lines of prepare a report, because that's what you'd have to do in the workplace. Who is it for? It's for the CEO, on how elements of the marketing mix can be applied to deliver sustainable competitive advantage and strengthen the company's competitive position. Yep. This would also be linked with professional skills marks, which might be for commercial acumen. So how would I approach a question if I got something like that in the exam? Well, the approach I would suggest that you take, first of all, we need to carefully read the requirements, because often in the panic of the exam, we can see a requirement we want to see rather than one that's actually given. Having carefully read, we can undertake the process of planning. I'd say it's really important to plan your SBL answer, because there's only 3 tasks in the exam. If you get it wrong, it's going to be quite difficult to pass. So what would I do in my plan? Well, the first thing I'd do is I'd start with a brainstorm. Having done a brainstorm, I'd then think about how many marks I need to get. So I'd go back through my brainstorm, picking on where potential marks could be achieved. And then professional skills requirement as a lens through which I craft my answer. So it was commercial acumen here, and when I'm putting my points across, I need to make sure that my points have an acknowledgement of the commercial benefit or commercial drawback of doing potential things. And if you do that, you should do really well. So let's just kind of go back to the question. Say the question was on maybe an airline, for argument's sake. There was a recent question on an airline, and we would do a brainstorm. So it's about the marketing mix. What I would do, and I'd do my brainstorm on the word area and I would title it up plan, because if you do it in the scratch pad won't get handed in. And maybe if you were a borderline case, the examining team would have a look at your paper, and if it was evidenced from your plan that you were a very good student, you might just get that extra mark. But don't rely on a plan to be marked, but that's when it would be useful. So anyway, let's brainstorm. If we were doing a brainstorm and we were thinking about the product, what am I going to brainstorm? Well, I'm going to brainstorm size, features, style, packaging, branding, warranty. And so just do that really quickly without thinking. And now I consider, in the context of an airline, would size be relevant? I think it would. You would use different sizes of aircraft to maybe service different routes where there might be different demands. So obviously, if it was a long haul flight from maybe Europe to Australia, you would have a big plane. You would probably only have one of those a day. But maybe if it was a popular features, it would depend on what people would want. But it would. Branding, would it be relevant? Yes, it might be. Maybe we've got a threat from a low-cost airline, so maybe we could use a secondary brand to compete as a low-cost player and have our premium brand to operate what we currently do well. Why? Because the brands are separate. So that's just an example. And what I would do through each of this brainstorm include like onboard Wi-Fi or the whole thing. So if I was thinking about pricing, I might think about Christmas, what competitors charging. I'm not sure P's accordingly, and just thinking where maybe marks could be achieved. Yep. And money, then maybe that's not a good idea. If we were selling events. So always be thinking like that, and always be keeping it in the context of the scenario. Yeah, keep it in context. So if it was an airline, it's always got to be, so packaging wasn't relevant and I wouldn't talk about it. But I did it in a brainstorm just to create a catalyst and a list which I could go through and check off. Yep. So also, when you're struggling a little bit, try to consider, so if it was an airline, maybe depending on where you live, you could relate to maybe Emirates, or you could relate to British Airways, or you could relate to American Airlines. Yep, keep it in context. Yep, try and visualize in real life. And also think about you. What would you do in this situation? Don't behave as they're supposed to on a SBL exam, which is you are supposed to behave as a strategic business leader in the context of the workplace. It's a practical, applied exam. That's what your examining team says. But people often are afraid to state the obvious, so please don't. Yep. Also, when developing a point, you can help yourself by thinking, well, so what? So as I explained about maybe having a secondary brand, so what? Why would you do that? Well, that would help fend off competition from other low-cost carriers, which are eroding some of our market share. So if we use our superior buying power as a large airline to get economies of scale on plane purchasing and use our knowledge and all the rest of it, that would help sustain our competitive advantage. Why would we move into this particular area? Because that is a growth economy where if we establish, we are able to generate large revenues. And so what? Why? What's the consequence of what I've just said? They're very useful things to be thinking of. But when developing your points in SBL, be aware that it's very unlikely you're going to get any more than a maximum of 2 marks for a well-developed point. And you would have to have 2 separate things really to get those 2 marks. So don't just assume it's 2 marks a point. It isn't. But if you develop a point and then you take that point further and talk about the so what, the why, the consequence, you have the potential for moving up to 2 marks. But be confident that you can do that. Yep. So 2 marks per point, really, really, really important. The key to SBL and the key to passing is practice. And please do that practice on the ACCA CBE platform. That's where your exam is taking place, and therefore you would practice your papers there rather than in Word or in Excel. The platform is not Word, is not Excel. It is different, and you need to get used to just need to get used to how it works. Yep. Think about learning to drive. You wouldn't learn to drive by reading lots of books on driving theory. You would get in the car and practice. That's what you need to do for SBL. I hope through what we've said on this video, you understand more now about what 7Ps represent. Combine what I've said with what you summarize from the article and what you see on the study hub, and that is all the information you need. And that just really leaves me to say thank you very much for your attention. Thanks very much for listening.